Welcome back. Thank you for clicking on today's video. Today we are talking about the logic of hypothesis testing and also introducing you to three different types of vocabulary or three different vocabulary words or vocabulary terms. So let's start with what is hypothesis testing? Now, in the previous video, I told you it was a form of statistical inference. Now, here, I'm giving you the specific definition from the textbook. Now, you can also read the thought experiment that the author of our textbook goes through, looking at a bag and pulling out different colored chips. That might be something valuable for you to read. I am going to talk about it in terms of somebody being on trial. I like to use this example. A lot of people teaching statistics use this example, and we're going to be able to use it throughout the course of learning about hypothesis testing. It's just a really good analogy. So thinking about the courtroom scenario, when somebody is on trial, basically there's two options, right? Guilty, innocent. It's one or the other. Now, one of the things about hypothesis testing is that there are two statements and they're competing statements. That means that not both of them have the opportunity to be true at the same time. Like, you couldn't have somebody who's kind of guilty, like they kind of have to go to jail. That's not a thing. So, one thing about hypothesis testing is that it is two competing statements. Next, the two competing statements are called the null hypothesis, which is denoted as H sub O, and the alternative hypothesis, which is denoted as H sub A. Now, the null hypothesis, null, what does that make you think of? Right, nothing, no relationship. So, in our hypothesis testing for chi-squared, which this chapter we're going to be using, it would be a statement of no relationship between the two variables. When we get to chapter 8, it might be there's no difference between the two groups. So no, that's our null hypothesis. Then you have the alternative, which is a relationship. And I always say you can remember H sub a relationship or a difference. So if we go back to the courtroom setting, that would be like saying they did nothing, the accused did nothing, they're not guilty, or in other words, they're innocent. And the alternative is that they're guilty, they did something. There's evidence of something. Now, when we go through and do a hypothesis test, that alternative hypothesis is really what we're trying to show evidence for. And it also is referred to as the research hypothesis because when you do these hypothesis tests, that's the one, that's what you're researching, that's what you're trying to show evidence for. Now, when you do the whole hypothesis test, essentially we will have numbers involved, and we just want to show that the probability of the null hypothesis being true is so low that we have evidence in favor of the alternative. It's kind of the same as in a courtroom setting where you're saying you have to have enough evidence going against that person being innocent to show guilt. That's the idea. That's what we're going to be doing. So those are the first three vocabulary terms. We have hypothesis testing, which I already showed you that definition from the textbook. Please note that it's shorthanded as HT, just like the confidence interval was shorthanded CI. And then in the hypothesis test, we have two competing statements. The null hypothesis, which is a statement of no relationship, and then the alternative hypothesis, which is a statement of a relationship or a difference. Also, it can be referred to as the research hypothesis. And remember, they're competing because both cannot have the opportunity to be true at the same time. So you will always end with one of them as the one that you're going to be going with or you've shown evidence for. So in future videos, we will very specifically talk about how to do this in the context of a chi-squared hypothesis test. See you there.